Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, this is your Inept General, and let's have a talk today about Chaos Confederations. I thought I'd just go over what I'd like to see in terms of confederations in the Warriors of Chaos and the Demons of Chaos in Total War Warhammer 3. We know we're going to get an update to those confederations relatively soon, and we'll go into the details of what CA has said about that. But I thought it would be a chance to talk about what I'd like to see and maybe hear back from you guys in terms of what you'd like to see Chaos Confederation look like in Total War Warhammer 3. So I think when we're talking about confederating the powers of Chaos, we have to start with the ever-chosen Archaon, and he, I think for me, has to sit at the pinnacle of the Chaos Confederation system. He's the main guy, each of the gods back him, he's the guy to lead Chaos forward. He, in my opinion, should be able to confederate with everyone. In terms of the other powers, I think that they need to be split into their individual gods, regardless of whether they are a Demons of Chaos faction or a Warriors of Chaos faction. That just should dictate how you begin the campaign and what kind of systems you want to use to play your individual campaign, really. So you'd have the Nurgle bosses with the Nurgle guys, the Tzeentch guys with the Tzeentch guys, Khorne, Slaanesh. And they would be able to confederate each other's legendary lords, but not Archaon the Ever-Chosen. So they'd stay in their individual silos of the mono gods. That's how I'd like to see that play. Each of these silos is going to get many more legendary lords. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 6 or more under each of the gods of chaos. So if you were a Khorne player, you'd be able to get 6 lords. If you're a Slaanesh player, you'd be able to get 6 of them, if not more, depending on what the final lord tally is at the end of Total War Warhammer 3. But there's a lot more to come, so bear that in mind when you look at the way I've laid this out. So Archaon's campaign could be hugely chaotic. He'd get a lot of lords under him in terms of all the lords of chaos. That would be a very unique and fun mechanic, and I'll get into ways you could maybe limit that number by player choice or what have you a little bit later on in this video. But that's my vision for it so far. That gets us to the undivided legendary lords, and I think each of the pillars, if it's not Archaon the Ever-Chosen, who I don't think should be able to be confederated by anyone, much like Settra in the Tomb Kings, then you've got the undivided legendary lords that any faction can recruit. So Nurgle could recruit Festus, Kugath, and Be'lakor. So that's how that would work. The undivided lords are able to be recruited by anyone, no matter what faction you play. Archaon can recruit everyone. Now, if you're paying attention here, this presents a little bit of a problem. If you're playing as Kholek or as Be'lakor, who can you recruit? Just each other? And if you look at it in the way that Undivided can recruit anyone else under them, you're probably looking at something like this. Now, it might not be as clean as the previous chart, but follow me and I hope it makes sense. Kholek and Be'lakor can recruit each other, but they can't recruit Archaon. And all the undivided lords can recruit any of the other lords of chaos below them, and any of the other lords of chaos can recruit either Kholek or Be'lakor. And so that's maybe how I think it could work going forward. Now this, I think, is maybe the cleanest and simplest way to do it for creative assembly, and will give people a lot of options, especially down the line as we get more of the Chaos Lords coming into the game. And it makes Archaon that peak of power where he really should be. Now, I could see the argument that some people might make that a champion dedicated to an individual god should be able to recruit from the other gods as well. This has happened in the lore multiple times, and it's a valid option, I think. What I think answers that main problem is the new alliance system in Total War Warhammer 3, where you're able to recruit units from other factions that aren't your own. And so you could have a unit of Khorne bloodletters in a Nurgle army. That's already able to happen. So you don't need to necessarily go a much more complicated way of confederating, which I think even the most sort of open fans of confederationship who would say, like, I think as long as they don't hate the faction, because each one, for those of you who don't perhaps know, each one of the Chaos Lords is kind of given an enemy, a brother they don't like. So for Khorne, that is Slaanesh. So the argument would be that a Khorne Legendary Lord can confederate with everyone except Slaanesh, and vice versa for Slaanesh and Khorne. And then Nurgle and Tzeentch would be the same, and then Tzeentch and Nurgle. And then everyone else you could recruit everyone else. That's a much more open style, but I think that is a bit more overly complicated than it needs to be. I think the outline of the different silos of gods, with Archaon at the top, and then the other undivided lords below being able to be recruited by any other faction who manages to get them to do their bidding. I think that's a method that works well. Now, the way I envisage some of these confederations happening is that you can do it through diplomacy like you could any other way, but you should also have the option when you subjugate a people and there's a legendary lord in that faction, then you get a choice. And a little pop-up menu comes up and it says, would you like to recruit this legendary lord as a lieutenant of the Ever-Chosen or whoever, or as a lieutenant in your armies, or would you like them to just stay and lead their own vassal faction? And then it's a yes or no, you can take them on or you can leave them in the vassal faction as the game works at the moment and let them get on with their own things, giving them some orders through the allegiance menu. So that's a way you could do it. I think that would offer a nice option. And if you did it that way, there's one more slight addition I'd like to make to my little chart here. And that is the addition of the Norscan Legendary Lords. In terms of future Norscan Legendary Lords, I'm not too bothered. But I think the fact that Wulfric and Frog are in the Warriors of Chaos book, I think they should be included. You should be able to recruit them. If you vassalize their factions as Archaon, or even as any one of the other legendary Chaos Lords, then they get the option to come and work for you rather than leading their own vassals. So I'd like to see that. I know that presents a lot of problems in terms of the way their skill trees work with and attributes work, with Wulfric giving bonuses to mammoths, and you wouldn't necessarily have access to mammoths unless it was through the allegiance system. But I'm sure there are creative ways around that. There would be ways around it, I'm sure, but it adds a bit more work. So we're probably not going to see it, but it's on my personal wish list. So let's see what CA have actually said about this themselves. This was in their patch notes for 2.0. We do want to mention that we've heard your feedback regarding the lack of Confederation for Warriors of Chaos. We really wanted to do it, but there was a lot of tricky interactions between it and the new Warriors of Chaos features that have proved very difficult to resolve, particularly related to non-legendary characters and their skills and upgrade paths. We're hoping to get a limited form of Confederation in for Archaon and Be'lakor in an upcoming patch, while we investigate more generalized solutions to some of the problems of Confederation. Now, for me, you could kind of get round this by really making it all about the legendary lords. If you recruit a vassal or a faction and they confederate with you as Warriors of Chaos, you should be able to just say, okay, just give me the lord. I don't care about the generic heroes and generals. I can get my own of them. Just give me the lord, and that's really what I want from the faction. And I think that's what most people playing want. They don't care about the generic lords at all, or the generic heroes. Just give me the legendary lords, and I'll be happy. So if they can make the legendary lords work, I think that's the way to go. But it also hints here, you'll notice, at Archaon not necessarily being at the pinnacle, but Archaon and Be'lakor being up there. So we might see something akin to this kind of structure, where they're at the top and they can confederate with other legendary lords from different factions. There's no mention of the Demons of Chaos legendary lords being recruitable here, and I think that's a mistake. I think you need to be able to make the demonic legendary lords recruitable for the Warriors of Chaos. I think if you either subjugate or manage to get a high enough diplomacy aspect with them, I really do want the demonic legendary lords to be recruitable by the Warriors of Chaos factions, and vice versa as well. Confederation both ways between these two factions is something that CA also needs to look at, not just amongst the Chaos legendary lords who you happen to put in the Warriors of Chaos faction. I know that's adding a layer of complexity on top of it, but I really hope that's the case. What do I think about the two guys at the pinnacle with Be'lakor? I don't love it. I like the fact that Archaon is maybe the only guy who can recruit everyone, but it adds a certain dimension to the Be'lakor campaign as well. And notice there was no mention of our man Kolek there, so maybe he should be recruitable by everyone. We'll have to wait and see how that works out there. Let me know your guys' thoughts on it. Do you like my idea? Do you like the idea that Creative Assembly are going for? Or do you want it to be a sort of free-for-all amongst all the Chaos Lords? Everyone can recruit everyone. Anyway, that's about it on my thoughts on Chaos Confederation, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. It'd be great to hear what the community at large thinks of what we can do for the Warriors of Chaos in terms of getting them moving in the same direction to destroy the civilized world in Total War Warhammer. Alright guys, as always, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright guys, bye.